this is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we are going to be talking some more about the Hunter Biden plea deal blowing up, which we talked about it yesterday, but they really tried to sneak in something really shady. Basically, they wanted Hunter Biden to not just get off on his they were charging him misdemeanors for his tax, non failure to pay, and there's a lot of stuff they just should have charged him a lot for, but they were just going to even misdemeanors. But they also had a gun charge that they were going to just kind of write off on his record if he kept up with probation, other stuff like that. Turns out they were trying to squeeze in like immunity for other things listed just in the case revolving like his tax stuff, but he could be charged over his dealings with foreign nationals and other stuff like that. So they wanted to slide in all this immunity that they were trying to not be public information. So the judge sniffed it out, and the whole thing ended up exploding. Now the DOJ might try to do some kind of other deal that they'll work out, but this was just really shady. So we're going to go through some interesting threads about it. And talk about what happened, or at least what we think happened. And also want to talk about Kamala Harris. I just posted this article. Maybe you have had a chance to read it, but we've been talking about her outrage regarding Florida. But it turns out, as far as her curriculum, she there was something that she approved of back in January that had like the same language in it. That she approved of back then, but now it's bad and it's racist and it's awful in Florida. And Ron DeSantis is just, racist, or that's the implication. They don't throw out that word specifically, but that's what they're trying to get at. So Ron DeSantis' press secretary, you spotted it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like The Office, how the turntables have turned, or I don't know what the phrase is exactly, but you guys, if you're Office fans, you know what I'm talking about. And also Mitch McConnell had a pretty frightful experience, at least watching it. And it happened yesterday, I think, relative to the time when I was on air, and I saw people talking about it on Twitter, and I wanted to mention it. And I wanted to play the video, but I wanted to see the video before I played it for you guys. So I do have the video in case you haven't seen it, but it's pretty scary. Kind of looks like he had a stroke, but they're saying he's okay. And he just keeps insisting that he's fine. But it is I'm glad that a lot of commentary that I've seen is, sympathy for him. But it is sparking conversations about a lot of our elected leaders and how old they are. And though you don't, they're not saying that it was a stroke. I don't know what he's going to have checked out and what they would express to the public anyway. But you can have a stroke at an earlier age. You don't have to be like super elderly to have one, but there's different health concerns that we've had for different folks, and just a lot of different things to consider moving forward. And I also want to play this clip for you guys of this Democrat legislator just, pushing for trans women to be in women's bathrooms and stuff. But before we jump into everything, I see you in the chat. Thank you for being here and watching. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on my website, different articles, etc., like the one I'm just posted and the one I'm going to talk about for a little bit. Check out different merchandise that we have at the store as well. You guys can check out my book, of course, Guys Blatantly Against Abortion, that's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. All my other books are just available on Amazon. If you search my name, Christina Albar, you'll be able to find it. I have more than 17 books that are published. 2 are nonfiction. The rest are fiction, and I write about a wide range of things, and like my children's book, which thank you guys for following me on Amazon and picking up some copies of the stuff that I write. So thank you very much. Check out different merchandise that's at the store, like the Roe Casey aborted life wins shirts. We got the black tea mugs. We got the My Money My Business shirts that you guys can check out and get as well. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blackteennews.com/donate. Cost a stream or on my website. So if you can help with that overhead, God bless you. Very much appreciate it. If you can't, I thank you guys for commenting, for adding at people. How the It's just how the turntables. Thank you, office viewer of a million times, my sister. um, yeah, please go ahead and if you can support, I appreciate it. If you can't, thank you for adding people and telling them to watch. That does really help. So thank you guys. If you're watching on YouTube and you'd like to send a super chat, you can do that. If you're watching on Facebook and you like to send stars, you can. But if you'd like to give directly on the website, there's a link in the description. So first thing I want to note and start off with is someone left a comment today. They're a trans woman from the UK, and they posted a comment on one of my videos. I don't know which one. I don't know if it was about pronouns. I don't know if it was about Dylan. I can't remember which one it was at, but I just read the comment off the notifications. I didn't go click on which video it was. And they said that they don't understand the non-binary stuff, and they said they don't usually comment, I guess, on videos like that, but they find themselves commenting more and more on stuff like that with like Dylan Mulvaney and other folks like that, because they feel that they just don't understand it, and they feel like bad for women who have to deal with all this stuff. I can only imagine all the stuff that they meant, but I told him, I said, I know there's like trans people out there who don't like this stuff, um, who see it as just something that's a part of their lives, not the entirety of their whole existence. Like a lot of activists today, well, if you don't use my pronoun, you don't believe in gender identity, you're denying my existence. It's like, no, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're not denying my existence. I wouldn't say that. I'm not aware of is there another group that says stuff like that besides like, the LGBT community stuff? And there's a lot of people who don't want in the community anymore. They're just like, I may be gay, I may be trans, but I don't want any part of it because it's toxic and weird. So I told them that I understand why you feel that the need to comment on stuff like that, and I feel sorry that you feel the need to do that, because they're not responsible for all the other crazy stuff. I think it's more when I address stuff, I address particular ideologies and comments and whatever. I don't feel like I go after like the whole of everyone, but so and I don't I know that it's not everybody. I mean, I still don't believe in gender identity, and I don't know how much they do either. I think that it just kind of seemed like there's people out there who understand they have gender dysphoria, and that's it is what it is. Again, it's not like the whole of their existence, because they also said that cisgender didn't make any sense either. Like they're not cis, and so if you're saying some women aren't cis and men aren't cis, then I would assume that you don't really buy into gender identity and other stuff like that. So there's people out there who feel that way, so you don't have to feel like every person who's struggling with gender dysphoria is on some kind of train. But I told them that it's so a part of culture right now. Like people love to be a victim. They want to be in a class that they feel is victimized yet praised, so they can have the power that comes along with being both. you know there's a lot of power right now in eyes and there's sympathy, and then there's protection, and then there's this power that people have over folks. Um, kind of similar to like the height of the hysteria during the pandemic that people had with the moral superiority with the mask and stuff. Like if you give people unearned power and you put like some kind of philosophy behind it, some people just want to club you to death with it. Some people just want to be like, hey, this is what I believe, and you can have a conversation. And some people are like, I am better than you, and some people are like, I'm better than you and you need to die. It got that intense like during the pandemic. And it's interesting to see so many people just kind of deny that happened. There was some kind of hearing and someone was really really denying. They're like, it was about masks, like they were grilling someone. They're like, from the government, and they were saying, do you see, the health secretary. They're asking the health secretary, was there any benefits to kids wearing masks? And he just wouldn't be honest and say no. And they're like, and they said forcing kids to wear masks, and he's like, well, who forced the kids? And we're like, are you crazy? We all lived in reality where they were forcing kids to wear masks in school and other places, even though there was no data to support that, even though like children were the least likely to have any issues at all. And that was being pushed by the recommendations of our government. So like, you can't pretend that people weren't coerced into this stuff, like to get jabbed and other things. It happened. Just own up to it. But they're just trying to memory hole it. Like, people didn't live their lives being afraid about going to work, or would they be able to keep their jobs. I know someone who basically had to leave school because he wouldn't get jabbed, and he could just do his stuff online, and they didn't want him to to still be a student because he wouldn't get jabbed. And then they're like, well, then later they're like, well, you can come to school, but you can't be enrolled, and we're not going to give you a degree. I'm like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like, we just can't forget that happened. But anyway, back to the trans issue. Politically, even though it's a small population of people who vote, there's so many emotions attached to it, and there's so much to gain politically. Like, if you had a court case that went through the Supreme Court, and if they had enough people on there and they could do some judicial activism, it could really hurt like the First Amendment and other rights like that. So I think that's the ultimate sort of play and push from politicians. I think they're an end game, an end goal, not because they really, really care about these people. Because I think if you really cared about these people, that you would want some safeguards put into our health system, so people weren't radically getting pushed through. There was a whistleblower that Barry Weiss, rather, which probably one of those two. I'm not sure if I pronounce her last name, but wrote about, and we read it on the show, and you can go back and check out that video of it. But the whistleblower report about who worked in a transgender clinic, and people were talking about how they're basically building the plane as it's flying. And that's how it's being described with the transgender care. They don't know what all the long-term effects are. They don't know those things, but they want to push it and be like, oh yeah, your kid, they know that they're trans at 3, and you just need to affirm them. That's really crazy. That's really crazy. If they cared, they put in the safeguards, and that's what a lot of people were asking for. And there are trans people who are like, I should have waited till I was older, or I waited till I was older. It would have been really bad if I did this as a kid. Like, don't do this to kids. Let them live their lives. If they grow out of it, they grow out of it. If they don't, they can deal with those things as an adult, but don't push it on kids. And politically, we know that there's a big war for that, and it doesn't make any common sense why people are doing it. But politically, I think it's just greed for a lot of reasons. There's political greed and what they can gain in the end, and there's also just money, just normal greed, financial greed, and there is ideology attached to it too. So and will continue to be, because people have trans their kids, and their hearts are going to be attached to that because they don't want to be wrong. And that same for like COVID stuff, same for basically anything. People don't want to be wrong. And it happens on both sides of the aisle. People will grasp so firmly onto something and, um, let cognitive dissonance rule for the rest of their lives because they can't look themselves in the mirror and say, I made a mistake. So, anyway, my heart goes out to them and the folks who feel like totally alienated in their community because they've lost their minds. And no unnecessary hate or shade to those folks. And I just said be well and stay safe out there. But well, that was a conversation I had today, so that's why I brought it up. But there's also this clip of this representative, this Dem, who was saying we need to have barriers in bathrooms, and people are making fun of him for this opinion here. I'll tell you why after you hear it.
Transgender people have been around for a long time, and they have rights, and they need to be respected. I read Ms. Scanlon's testimony. I wasn't here to hear it, and I think Penn didn't deal with your situation like they could have and should have in putting up some type of different barriers in the women's area of the locker room. But that's another issue. But things should be dealt with in a different way. This is an easy way for people to try to get points. Pick on a minority group that is the most minority and least understood in our country.
So I saw a great comment. It was like, yes, we should have barriers in the women's bathroom, like floors and doors and ceilings and walls. Yes, we should have differences in women's bathrooms. Um, but and I know there's trans women who want to come into the bathrooms because they don't feel safe in the male bathrooms and stuff. Um, I still if that's a concern for them, I don't understand why they can't see that's also a concern for women themselves. Um, but there have been cases where people have tried to have like barriers and stuff, and tried to accommodate, and they didn't care. Like there was a case back when Obama was president in Illinois, and there was a teen who didn't care about the accommodations, a trans uh teen who was a boy who identified as a girl. They wanted it in the women's spaces, and they didn't want to feel alienated or isolated from the women, because that's and this person was still attracted to women, from my understanding, from at least from what I heard back then. So that makes it still kind of creepy. Well, pretty creepy, I think. um but he demanded access to that locker room, to those female spaces. So some people aren't in for it for accommodations, that they just want you to bow down to what they want. So then again, I know not everybody is quite at that space, and some people are just like, oh yeah, I love just a single stall space, and that would be great. Some people want in because the fact that you're trying to deny them says that you don't think that they are a woman. And there's trans people who are like, I know I'm not a woman, I'm a trans woman, and don't mind the stalls, the single person stall. But there's some people who, a lot of people and a loud faction of this group, especially on social media and other places, who don't want to be separated. Because think about Leah Thomas, the swimmer, who did an interview and was asked, like, well, what do you think about all these women who say it's not fair for you to compete? And Thomas said, well, if you really think I'm a woman, I should be competing with you guys. I've met the requirements, for the testosterone levels or whatever, and they say that I can compete, so I should be able to compete. And people are like, oh my gosh, it's so terrible. I'm like, you know what? Kind of has a point. If you say that Leah Thomas is a woman, then why can't he compete with the women? If you think that, because and he knows that a lot of the girls had to go along with it, or they didn't have to go along with it, but they felt like they had to, and they were bullied into going along with it. I do have an interview with Riley Gaines. If you haven't seen it, go check out my videos. I have a video with Riley Gaines, an interview, and we talk about the situation in length. But they knew that there was a lot at stake if they spoke out against it. So yeah, you'd have people, say like, well, we want you to be happy, and we're not denying that you can be a woman. So there's that language that, we want to give you some concessions. We just don't want, we would just like you to respect us. And he's using that, saying, well, no, if you give me this sliver, it's not real. It's not legitimate unless we go all the way. So I just want to remind people of that. There's no like middle of the road for some of these folks in this ideology. So anyway, let's move on. Before we get to the Hunter Biden story, I really quickly want to mention this Kamala Harris thing. Now, we've talked about it for days, but there was something interesting that popped up last night. I was scrolling through Twitter, and the press secretary of Ron DeSantis had tweeted out something that was very interesting. So back in January, and we've talked about this at the time, back in January, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and other folks. Well, I don't know if Joe Biden, he probably did. I couldn't find something specifically from Joe Biden, but the White House, I know Jean-Pierre had made a statement about Florida and their AP standards. So there was an AP class, AP course that Florida rejected. And the narrative was, oh my gosh, Florida doesn't want to teach African American history. This is so terrible, blah. That was the narrative that was going around. And VP Harris said that these people were extremists back then for, rejecting it. And the press secretary said it was incomprehensible that they would block it. And the media went along with the narrative like, oh, DeSantis is bad. Now, mind you, the Florida standards says that kids have to learn African American history. It says that. And they had queer theory and other things that were in it, right? But now we find out that there was a section in it that said instruction includes how slaves develop skills. This is what she's upset about now. Give me 1 second. Back then, there was a section in there that had something similar to what she's upset about. And trying to find it from my article really quickly. Well, here it is. In addition to agriculture work, enslaved people learn specialized trades as painters, carpenters, tailors, musicians, and healers in North and South. Once free, there's a typo. Americans use these skills to provide for themselves and others. So they explained back then in the AP course that they approved of that there were benefits back then. They said there were benefits. Didn't use that word, but that's what they explained. So back then in January, they approved of it. Great, right? Um, Now they're upset because essentially the same thing. Instruction includes how slaves develop skills in which some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. So it's the same thing. The wording is just different. And now it's really bad and it's revisionist history. But back then, like not a peep about it. And they were upset because Florida rejected it. Now, the reason why they rejected it is because there was queer theory and other stuff. If you guys don't remember, I'll quickly read some of the stuff that was in there. But there was this intersectionality and activism. And some of the stuff is by like Marxists and communists and stuff they wanted to read. Black queer studies, which queer theory has roots in pedophilia. Movements for Black lives, just talking about Black Lives Matter stuff. Black feminist literary thought, the reparations movement, Black study, and Black struggle in the 21st century. So they didn't want to approve it because it had CRT stuff in it. So you guys can go check out that article. It's all written out now with some links and other things like that. But it's all just political nonsense, outrage. And I have, some snippets of Dr. Allen who collaborated on the current curriculum that they're trashing, and some of he gave great commentary. We talked about this yesterday too, but go ahead and please check out that article. Um, it's really wild how insincere these people are. It's just really, really wild. It is political outrage and nonsense. Now, Byron Donalds is in some back and forth with DeSantis's team and his supporters, who, I mean, he's from Florida. He has, announced his endorsement of Trump. He's a big Trump guy, a defender of Trump. And he did voice a similar concern about the phrasing of the curriculum. And he said, I'm sure that they'll, change it or whatever. And Florida was like, no, we're not changing it. It's accurate. And DeSantis folks have called out Byron and were like, no, we're not giving you a quarter. I think Steve Deese, who wrote the book for the movie we just saw, Notorious, he's with the Blaze, and he was like, no quarter to these people who go on these racial rants and other stuff like that, and are grifters. And not quite that phrasing or whatever. He did say no quarter. He was upset about the Donalds thing. And so then Byron was like, y'all are overreacting. And I don't know how much people are overreacting about his reaction, but I think it would have been best if he just kind of didn't say anything about it. And you don't have to tweet about everything. If you didn't like it, you can make a phone call to people I'm sure in your state, and have a conversation. I mean, some things that are done publicly, you go ahead and you address publicly, but when it's people on your own side, and you have relationships, just pick up the phone. Just pick up the phone. So now there's infighting that sort of way, and it's just not good for the cause. But in this case of Kamala Harris and the White House, they're trash. What can I say? Anyway, moving on. Yesterday, we talked about the plea deal blowing up with Hunter Biden, and we didn't quite know all the details at the time. We just knew that it just didn't quite work out. But and it was kind of confusing at the time why it had kind of blown apart. But they were trying to squeeze an immunity for some stuff in there that shouldn't have been squeezed in there. So before I start going through the threads, I do want to play this other clip from the White House when they were questioning the press secretary. We played part of her statement at the beginning where she's like, he's a private citizen. So you just got to talk to his lawyers. But some people ask about the gun charge, and not specifically about the gun charge. They phrase it in a way of, how does Biden feel about prosecuting gun charges? So it was pretty great.
President Biden has spent most of his political career working on gun laws, on gun reform. Does he believe that someone who is charged with possessing a firearm illegally should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law?
So here I'm going to be, I think I know where this question is going, and I'm just going to continue to say, as it relates to the case that we're seeing in Delaware, I'm just going to not speak to that. It is an independent matter. This is up for the Department of Justice. Even with the question that you're asking me, it's one of those legal criminal matters, and it's up to that process, that legal process. I'm just not going to speak to it here.
But again, the president, when he was a senator, crafted gun legislation. As president, he talks often about the need to get illegal firearms off of our streets. So when someone possesses one illegally, what does the president believe should happen to them?
The president has been very clear. You just laid out where his position has been, what his policies has been, what he was able to pass into law. I'm going to be very mindful here. I'm going to be very careful because I see where this question is going, and I'm just going to refer you, as this has been an independent investigation. It's overseen by the Department of Justice. I'm going to let them speak to this as they are moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah. Side note, I said nefarious. It was notorious. No, it is nefarious. I said notorious. Thanks to my sister in the chat. But kudos to that journalist there. Kudos to that journalist there, because people have been saying this. I'm sure I think I said it yesterday, and it's something I've repeatedly said. You can't be the president of the United States coming at people for guns consistently, talking about there's no amendments that are absolute. And your son just gets off, not even really a slap on the wrist, over his gun charge. Something that you wrote into law. So, great question. How does he feel about people who are breaking the law and having illegal guns out there? And she's like, I see what you're doing. Yeah. But you should be able to clearly answer that the president believes in prosecuting people to the fullest extent of the law relating to those particular charges. So it's just different when it's Hunter. Of course it's different when it's Hunter. This is so embarrassing for them. But, they think... I was listening to Ben Shapiro talk about it. He's like, they think you're stupid. They think you're stupid. I don't think it's a matter of they think everyone is stupid. They just know that they can get away with it, or are pretty certain that they can get away with it, and don't have to be held accountable. Again, I don't, she was asked, I think today, if Joe had pardoned Hunter, and she said no. I didn't see that clip. I just saw people talking about it. I wouldn't bet on that. The only reason to make such a comment is because she doesn't believe that he will end up needing to be pardoned. But I absolutely think Joe Biden would pardon his son. So I wouldn't doubt that for a second. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I think it's more likely that she thinks it's a silly question, or maybe not so much a silly question, but that she's not going to really dignify it with the truth, because she doesn't think it will get to the point where he would need one. So Will Scarf, he's a lawyer who wrote up a thread about what he thought kind of happened yesterday in the courtroom. So I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to go through another thread. The Hunter Biden plea deal was apparently more outrageous and far-reaching than had previously been publicly known. In return for pleading to the 2 misdemeanor tax fraud charges with a joint recommendation of no prison time, Hunter was getting not just a pretrial diversion on his felony gun charge that would leave his record clear if he completed probation, so he could technically, people talk about red flag laws and stuff. If you guys don't charge people, how will things pop up on their record for you to know there's a flag? So that's another big problem. That's another big issue with Hunter Biden. and his dad. Anyway, but also broad guarantees against further prosecution on a wide range of other charges that haven't been publicly aired as of yet. Hunter refused to plead guilty without these guarantees, so the judge effectively blew up the deal. Hunter wants to walk away from a decade of criminal activity, including potential FARA violations and other serious criminal charges, with a slap on the wrist. It's a scandal that the Biden's DOJ was willing to agree to this kind of deal. So, they were trying to sneak in immunity with other things that are still being talked about, still being investigated, that we know more about now, because of like whistleblower testimonies. And can you imagine if the laptop was never leaked to that guy in Delaware? Well, not leaked, but if he sent it to the FBI and then he like gave it to Giuliani, and if other like press people weren't looking at it, like the New York Post has written a lot of stories about it, the Free Beacon has written a lot of stories about it, and other maybe like 2 years later, so there were, NBC and other folks were like, well, it appears that it's actually true, but we found out a lot about shenanigans about that just because he left his computer behind and someone started digging into it, which that computer shop repair salesman got. He was really, really harassed after that, but thankful to the whistleblowers who came forward to talk about these things, and they're credible too. They're credible whistleblowers as well. So but the media hasn't been, I think, covering it in the way that they should. There's talk of Biden being actually impeached, and man, the girl from The View who's supposed to be the Republican, Alyssa, she's like she said, I'm concerned they shouldn't impeach Biden because of the precedent it will set about lowering the bar on impeachment. And when she tweets something, she makes it so you can't comment. And I can imagine why, because people had a lot of comments to say. Obviously, the impeachment bar was lowered when they impeached Trump. They had what was like obstruction of Congress, like, oh, because he didn't respond in the way that you wanted, you're gonna impeach. He's a totally different. The three branches. There's checks and balances, but they're not subservient to you, bruh. So the charges in the original impeachment inquiry to Trump didn't make sense. I didn't think either were good, but considering the emotion heightenedness of January 6th, the second one I can understand more. They certainly shouldn't have done it so fast. My eyes kind of, I guess I just heard some thunder. It looks really light out. I guess that doesn't mean that there's not going to be thunder and stuff, but I don't know. It seemed like I thought we were going to have a nice day. But they really did it way too fast to rush through, because they wanted to I don't know, embarrass him, make sure he could never really be president or whatever. But they should have gotten more information, because there were things in the impeachment trial that didn't really pan out, that wasn't so they really didn't do their due diligence on the issue. But that first inquiry was crazy, and they really impeached him because he was looking into Joe and they wanted to punish him, and the stuff he was looking into seemed pretty legit as far as having questions. So they definitely lowered the standard, and people did warn about the sort of barriers that they were breaking to go after Trump can be utilized again. But in the case of Biden, some of the stuff that they're talking about with the collusion and stuff with his son, and the different business dealings and the money he was getting, if that stuff pans out to bribery, that is an impeachable offense. So these people pretending like, oh my gosh, they're just going after Biden because he loves his son. That's not what's happening at all. There's some serious allegations with Joe and his son, and And through information that we have from his son, from private messages, and information we have from business partners, they're very connected. It's not far-fetched. It's not like some conspiracy theory, QAnon conspiracy theory or something. It's legit stuff. Legit stuff. So he could very well be impeached. They should. Well, no, he's not. Well, I don't know. It depends where the political tables will turn. If it got that serious, I don't know what he will or won't do. I don't know. I don't like to predict too much. But if they, I mean, the House, everybody, I mean, the Senate, they don't have enough votes to actually impeach. So it going to the end where he's kicked out of office, I don't foresee that happening in any scenario. I don't, but they could always, pressure him politically to have him try to step down, but he's an old man and an old stubborn man. But the Republicans should look into it, at least do impeachment inquiries. That should at least happen. And if they were smart, they'd cut their losses and pick someone else to run. If they were smart. They probably don't feel like they have to because they think Biden can take Trump in a rematch. But if they cared about their party, if they cared about the country, they would look to other options. They would. But these people out here are weird. What can I say? These political operatives. So let me go through this thread with some transcripts from the court to walk you through this situation that was pretty wild. Okay. Judge Norika asked the U.S. attorney 5 times if there was any precedent for such one-sided plea agreement like he gave to Hunter. He said no all 5 times and even admitted this was crafted to suit the facts and circumstances. So the court, you don't have any precedent for that, right? Why said no, Your Honor. The court, do you have any authority that any court has ever accepted that or said that they would do that? No, Your Honor. This was crafted to suit the facts of the circumstances. The judge had never seen this type of agreement not to prosecute like the ones she was being asked to sign off on. There was and is no precedent for the U.S. Attorney Weiss to give to give to Hunter Biden such special treatment while strictly enforcing the law on everyone else. All right, now that I want to talk a bit about this agreement not to prosecute, the agreement not to prosecute is in the gun case, but it also includes crimes related to the tax cases. So we looked through a bunch of diversion agreements that we have access to, and we couldn't find anything that had anything similar to that. Hunter gets a lifetime get out of jail free card from the attorney. Do you have any precedent for agreeing not to prosecute crimes that have nothing to do with the case or the charges being diverted? And they said, I am not aware of any, Your Honor. So let me first ask, do you have any precedent agreeing to not prosecute crimes that have nothing to do with this case or the charges being diverted? I'm not aware of any, Your Honor. Do you have any authority that says that that's appropriate and that's the probation officer should agree to that as terms, or the chief of probation should agree to that as terms of a diversion agreement? Your Honor, I believe that this is a bilateral agreement between the parties that the parties view in their best interest. I don't believe that the role of probation would include weighing whether the benefit of the bargain is valid or not from the perspective of the United States or the defendant. So have you ever seen, I think I have just asked you this, but have you ever seen a diversion agreement where this agreement not to prosecute is so broad that it encompasses crimes in a different case? No, and I would say, Your Honor, I don't think it is broad in this sense that We're going to talk about that. You can sit down. So in this gun diversion thing, they tried to sneak in an immunity deal for his other tax stuff that's still being worked out, and they just wanted blanket immunity for agreeing to plead guilty to misdemeanors and no jail time. The DOJ agreed never to prosecute Hunter again for the rest of his life. The the actions taken by the DOJ Crimes Division and the U.S. Attorney Weiss are an insult to every other citizen. So first, it got my attention because you keep telling me that I have no role. I shouldn't be reading this thing. I shouldn't be concerned about what's in these provisions, but you have agreed that I will do that, but you didn't ask me for the sign off. So do you have any precedent for that? Your Honor, no. No, I don't have precedent. As I read it, tell me if I'm reading this correctly, that under the agreement as you all have drafted it, the only way that charges could ever be brought is if I have the hearing that you all agreed I have to have, right? Yes. So if I don't have a hearing or make a finding, no criminal charges can be pursued for the gun charge or any other federal charges within the scope of the agreement not to be prosecuted, right? I believe that's right, Your Honor. This is wild. In fact, the judge was so surprised by the plea and diversion agreements that she questioned the constitutionality and what role she would play going forward. It appears that the attorney rigged the outcome for Hunter. Are you still? Well, he asked if he was still doing it. The court said, I'm concerned that provision makes me a gatekeeper to criminal charges and puts me in the middle of a decision as to whether to bring a charge. And we already talked about separation of powers, and that choice as to whether to bring charges that's the executive branch, not the judicial branch. So is this even constitutional? And I believe it is, Your Honor, because what the structure makes clear is that Your Honor is just finding facts. And they have some stuff about the laws. They don't have any more transcript, but yeah, that's bananas. That's pretty crazy, guys. So it appears that when the judge really started looking into it, that the DOJ started flipping out because they didn't want it to be known, all the kind of crazy stuff that they were agreeing to, and then it just kind of imploded from there. And they should really be ashamed of themselves. If anything, that he did it improperly acting as far as his dealings with China and other stuff, to hide that in the diversion thing along with the gun charged and just be like immunity. So I saw someone under a thread about the press secretary being asked about Joe Biden giving his son immunity, and someone was like, "Oh, they wouldn't do that. We're not talking about Trump." And they're like, "Bro, they just tried to slide immunity into this plea agreement." So he would have got just pled guilty to the misdemeanors on his tax stuff, which a lot of stuff we know because whistleblowers and how awry the case was, which it already sounded shady anyway, but the whistleblowers did shed light to a lot of things. And we talked yesterday about how one of someone from Hunter's team tried to pretend to represent the other side and get the whistleblower testimony thrown out or like, oh, we don't actually need it, get it unsubmitted from the record. And the judge was ready to like sanction them. What an awful, terrible thing to do. Just not wise, but I guess that's what happens when you represent someone who can just get away with stuff. Someone who is the son of the president. So if you're a citizen out there and you're concerned about the government, I don't know, looking at your $600 on Venmo, and if you're out there concerned about whether Joe Biden is gonna, make it so that you can't buy an AR-15 because they say that's an assault weapon, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And you're reading the news and you just see how they treat people differently, blatantly, and what they try to do in secret. The fact that they tried to slide this through and that the DOJ was okay with sliding this through is pretty remarkable. So we have different tiers of justice, and it's pretty evident, and it just makes our faith in the system crumble. And I'll say this again, like the government is supposed to, it operates off the consent of the governed. So what happens when it all exists on faith? It all exists on faith and confidence in our system that that there is a checks and balances, that you can be represented. But what happens when it's clear that you are the powerless, and then there's people who are just so totally above the law? And I think we kind of get that feeling from time to time when we feel our most cynical. But here's blanketly, like, we're just bare naked in front of us, rather, something that we can see in real time. And the White House is just like, well, Joe Biden never in business with his son. And the press secretary was asked, like, why are you changing your language? You said he never talked to his son before about the business dealings. And now you're saying that he wasn't in business with him. That's a different confession. She's like, we never changed our language. And I don't think it's because they think you're stupid. I think it's because they just know that people will run cover for them. The media will run cover for them as much as they can. Sometimes, Rush Limbaugh would call it a random act of journalism. Sometimes they do that and ask real questions and press a little bit. I've never seen, I think the most Joe Biden was kind of really pressed was after Afghanistan, because people were so upset about that. And he got really upset. You could see him. He has a short fuse, people pretend like he doesn't, but you can see it in instances and moments, and he snaps. There's different compilations of him snapping at journalists who ask real questions. But they, for the most part, know that the fact checkers who were, making bank, or I don't know how much money they were making during the Trump era, but they were on it all the time, kind of consistently doing their jobs. Joe Biden, they're like sleeping at the wheel. They're like, oh, it's so great to not have to do our jobs. Oh, we can just kind of relax. Like, no, this man is lying all the time. But they know that you'll push narratives like that. They know that you'll run cover for Kamala Harris and her lies about Florida and others. They know that you'll do that. They know that you'll do that. And it's pretty ridiculous, guys. So I think they think some of their voters are dumb and gullible, for sure. But they're invested and want to believe. And they won't question. And even people who do question, like, oh, that's shady, they'll still be like, well, you know what? At the end of the day, I don't want Trump to win. So yes, I will. He can be the shadiest person in the world. I still won't vote for Trump. And some people don't want to admit that they have to make that sort of I don't know, decision. So they'll just ignore the shady Biden stuff. Or some people just do it for money. There's some influencers that, like, oh, they want to impeach Joe for no reason. There's this kid, Harry Sisson. I know you're not that dumb, kid. I know you're not that dumb. You're just lying to your audience for clicks and for fame and power. So you can hang out with Obama and Joe Biden. It's not worth it. At least, maybe, I guess it's worth it to them. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think your integrity is worth a TikTok check or, deposit to your PayPal. I don't think it is. I don't think it's worth a selfie with the president. I don't think so. At least it won't be to me. I'm just gonna, I'm not saying I'm always right, but I always at least try to be honest. There's some people who, blatantly lie to you guys all the time. They make a career out of it. Anyway, we will continue to watch this story. They may come up with another. They'll probably work. They're probably working on another plea deal as we speak. So I'm not. There's a good chance he'll still get off on all this, pretty much anyway. But they really do need like a special counselor to provide over the Hunter Biden situation. Merrick Garland really needs to be grilled for this. And Joe Biden has a lot that he's attached to that could take him down, but I don't think they have those kind of numbers. But they should try anyway, because whatever the political ramifications is, it is their job to look into it. And the American people are owed that, I think. But it was a crazy world we live in. Before I let you go, I just want to talk about this Mitch McConnell scare that we had yesterday. Again, I saw this while we were talking yesterday, and I didn't want to play it live until I had seen it, because I didn't quite know what was going on. I mean, I was reading about it, but if you haven't seen it, it's a bit disturbing. So I just want to give you fair warning before at least I find it disturbing, because to me it looks like well, people said it looks like he's having a stroke, but he says he's fine. And he's been asked about it. Joe Biden called him. He said he had a sandbag moment, which is a jab at Joe, a playful jab at Joe, when he was, tripped over a sandbag and fell. But let's go ahead and watch it.
Bipartisan cooperation and a string of
Okay, Mitch. Anything else you want to say, or should we just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press? Let's go back.
Go ahead, John.
I'll take it. Let's go back to you.
Go ahead, John.
So he says he's fine. I think people asked, was he gonna see his doctor? He says he's fine. He did have a bad fall some time ago. Had like broken ribs and stuff. So I've seen, people express sympathy for his situation, and it's scary to see something like that. But it has sparked conversations about some of our elected officials that are very, very old. He's 81. Joe Biden is 80. Trump is 77. Dianne Feinstein is 90. I think all those ages are correct, but a lot of people are talking about term limits today and yesterday, and maximum ages for stuff. McConnell's very good at what he does. He'll forever. Not everybody likes McConnell. And I'm not saying I particularly care for McConnell, but I can say he's very good at his job. And the gutsy move that they made with denying Garland, that was a gamble. It's a pretty big gamble, and it paid off a big time. So forever kudos for that. Forever kudos for that. But there comes a time when you have to prepare the next generation and hand it off. And he's you could argue he's there, or you could argue he's getting there very quickly. It's good to grow old and to have family and friends around you and have lived a full life. At the same time, it's hard to watch other people get old. I don't think it's great that our president is falling everywhere. That you see his schedule often empty. especially on the campaign trail. It was like, we're calling a lid for the day. It's like 11. What do you mean calling a lid? You didn't do anything. Um, I don't think that's great. And I think a lot of people would like to see some younger people at the helm. And not because, young people are so great. There's a lot of young people. I'm just like, I can tell you're young. You haven't really fleshed out your ideas so much. You still got your college professor in your head, or your ultra lib progressive professor in your ear, and you don't know how to think for yourself. That's very apparent from some conversations that I have on like places like TikTok and stuff. But um, you know, there's a lot of things in this nation that are rapidly evolving, and you have just different generations see things different from different perspectives. And I appreciate the knowledge and the wisdom of folks who serve now and have come before. But when it gets to the point where people seem kind of impaired, you need to start making succession plans. So I hope he's okay. I hope he continues to be okay. But I hope he's considered what happens after he can no longer do his job. And I don't want to see them wheeling in McConnell like they wheel in Feinstein. I guess that's all I got to say. I guess that's all I got to say about it right now. But just if you pray, keep him in your prayers. If you care enough. But I hope he's okay and his family's okay. But what a scary thing, especially if you're watching from home, and especially if you're a relative, and no one wants to have a moment like that anyway. But to have it while you're talking to the press, in DC, that's not great. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, etc. Please check out the article that I just dropped, and please share it, because of course there's that narrative going around about Florida, and I'd like to squash it. I'd like to see it squashed. I think it needs to be squashed, because there are people who are Republicans, but are still iffy on Ron DeSantis, like Black Republicans who heard about that AP thing back in January, them getting rid of it, and they were concerned about that. And now there's this new narrative. So it is something that people need to dude, it's fake news, it's fake outrage, and here's why. So go ahead and share that article I wrote, please. Check out different merchandise that we have at blacktnews.com, like my book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. You guys can find it on Amazon. You guys can find it on Barnes & Noble. If you go to the right to the website, blacktnews.com, there's a link actually in the description that'll take you to the book. My youngest sister is actually the one who did that artwork right there. So I love it every time I see it. She did such an amazing job on the book cover. And it covers theology, obviously, but also covers rights. It talks about politics. It talks about philosophy and science, etc. So it's very expansive. It covers a lot. So just go ahead and check it out. You can check out some other books that I have as well. You guys can also check out different merch at the store. I know there's some Canadian peeps in there who watch my content, so you guys can go ahead and get those Free Canada shirts. I made these during the trucker protest, by the way, and the black tea mug, and we got the You Are Not That Special mug that you guys can get and trigger someone in your life. So go ahead and check out stuff at the store. I see some people popping in. The show's over, guys. We're not doing 2 hours today. God bless you guys. But you guys can watch it back, obviously. Thank you guys for those of you who watch it live. Thank you to those who watch it back later when you're coming home from work. I know some people are watching it in work. But thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoyed the content, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Kamala Harris skit that I did, I played it yesterday on the show. It's on all my socials pretty much, so you guys can go ahead and check that out. I'm thinking I will have another Kamala Harris thing tomorrow, though. I I don't think my impression is great, but I think it'll be funny. It's not gonna be another like she meets a slave thing, but people have requested that I do continue that as a series. And I don't know if I should specifically continue as a series involving Kamala and repeatedly meeting the slave from the past, or should it just be like other woke activists and stuff? Um, I'll have to think about it. But I will have something else Kamala Harris related tomorrow for the weekend in time for that. So God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.